I've noticed that any of the millionaire Christians, believers that I've known have been incredibly generous people. They've operated in love. And if your heart is right, see, God doesn't care how much money you have if he has your heart. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. It's not money. Most people get all tricked out on that. If God can get it through you, he can get it to you because he can trust you with his kingdom, his covenant, right? And his covenant involves people. Therefore, more money equals more good if your heart's right. Love is an important part of business, at least the way I do things, the way hopefully you'll do things. I want you all to press into understanding this and understanding this well and understanding this thoroughly and deeply and comprehensively. Because no matter where you're starting, if you can wrap your hands around this, you will be successful. And if you can't, then you won't. We live in this world, but we're not of this world. The danger is when Christians
the kingdom
who are trying to
operating
operate,
system training
I call it
is
a
now
kingdom
starting.
operating system, right? And that encompasses our family, our friendships, our fitness, our finances, our focus. And that's like being a full stack Christian. If you look through the Bible, it's very clear that God wants us to be operating on all 8 cylinders. Jesus didn't pay the price for us to operate on 3 cylinders. He didn't pay the price for us to operate on 2 cylinders. He paid the price for us to operate on all 8 cylinders, if you will. So the incubator, the bulk of the incubator is the financial cylinder. And if you break it down into its simplest terms, it's this. The Bible teaches the principle of the river, not the bucket. The Bible teaches us the principle of the pipeline, not the bucket. The Bible teaches us the principle of the orchard, not the apple. And the best way to understand that is to think in terms of a bucket. And you've got a bucket of water, you reach in, you've got a 1 cup measuring object, you pull out 1 cup of water from the bucket. What happens to the level of water in the bucket? Well, right, if this is your bucket and you remove 1 cup, the level goes down by 1 cup, right? Pretty simple. Now, if you contrast that with a river and you remove 1 cup from the river, what happens to the volume of the river? Absolutely nothing. Not a single thing. Okay? So that's what the Bible teaches. And you can see that in Proverbs, where it talks about you'll have goats, you'll sell the hay, you'll sell the wool, you'll sell the milk, and you'll have milk for your servant girls. Okay, that's the principle of equity. Now, I say all that to say, if you can boil it down and understand this principle of bucket versus river, then everything else will fall into place. Because financial freedom is then quite simply this. If this is money and this is time, then, and this is our level of our monthly nut that we have to crack, right? So to pay our bills, to take care of business, this is the minimum level. Then as soon as we hit up here, we're financially free, okay? Now the challenge is many people try to do this with the vehicle of a job. And again, there's nothing wrong with jobs, don't misunderstand me. But I believe if you're called to business, if you're called to giving, if you're called to building the kingdom, then a job is a passing through point. A job is a means to an end. A job is not the destination. Because if God has put on your heart to be a big giver, then guess what? You've got to be a big receiver to be a big giver. If he can get it through us, he can get it to us. And God's a God of abundance. Just look at an apple orchard. There's apples rotting on the ground. God is a God of surplus and abundance. The challenge with this mechanism or this vehicle for creating income, right? And again, we're talking about the baseline needs for financial freedom and independence, which is our monthly budget. is that a job income is taxed at the highest possible level, right? When you're making six figures, the highest level at this stage is like 38, 37%. It's a stair-step system. So your first 10, 20 grand of income, you're taxed less than your last chunk of income. So you have an effective tax rate, you have a marginal tax rate. The bottom line is if you're earning income from a job, you're taxed at your highest level. Most people don't think about that. When you look at your income and expenses, our two greatest sources of expense are tax and interest that we pay on things like credit cards, home mortgages, car notes, consumer debt, department store debt, all that stuff that we call consumption. So if we're trying to be good stewards, then part of our stewardship formula must be, how do we reduce our greatest expenses? Right? When Jesus told the parable of the talents, there was three people, two of them doubled, five brought back five, two brought back two, one of them buried it, didn't bring back anything. He was pretty fired up at the dude who buried it. He did not like that. So a job income is not only taxed at the highest rate, but you're capped. Okay. Now, again, a job is a means to an end. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We can be grateful. The challenge with jobs are, not only are we taxed at the highest rate, not only are we capped at our income, the next challenges for kingdom builders is someone else tells us where to go, when to show up, when to eat, when to go to the bathroom. Someone else determines our associations, who we are around, which determines the activity that goes on between our ears, our thinking patterns, our processes. Someone else controls our time. And I don't believe that that's the highest and best for God's kids. I believe we're called to freedom. And again, this is if you're called to entrepreneurship. There's many people that are just called to a job, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We need plenty of people, but I'm saying that if somebody's called to entrepreneurship, then this is the mindset that they must adopt and build and reinforce. If you're called to be a big giver and sower, then a job at some point should become unacceptable to you because it's beneath your capacity. Okay. So understand my heart on this thing. Again, I'm thankful for all the jobs I had. I don't have any problem with jobs. I do have a problem with a job if somebody's called to more. I have a problem with my brothers and sisters settling. I have a problem with my brothers and sisters sowing $2,000 a year into the kingdom as opposed to $200,000 a year into the kingdom. So again, I'm qualifying this because people are coming on this call at different times, and I don't want somebody to hear me and think I'm bashing jobs. I am not. But if God has called you to be a black belt, then don't settle for being a white belt, period. Okay? Now, the challenge with these jobs is the tax rate, the time, the someone else controlling what we think about, often someone else controlling. It's not a headship position. The other problem with a job is it's borrowed. A job is not owned. Go ask anybody who's been laid off unexpectedly. There is no ownership in a job. The way of the pension has gone. The other problem with a job is the investment opportunities in the investment vehicles. The other problem with a job is most of the time, the people that we associate with in a job are often middle class. And as a result, we often follow worldly patterns of what to do with our money and how to invest and how to think about it and how to stewardship it. Right? So monthly nut is here. You know, for most people, that's 5 to 15K. You can do a lot of damage. You're good to go, right? So this then becomes our primary objective. Let's have this covered without a job. Let's have this covered some other way. Let's have this covered so our nut is covered, whether we're traveling, sleeping, regardless of what we're doing. Let's have our nut covered, okay? So then the question becomes, well, how do we do that? And there's different ways to accomplish and achieve that objective. Each one of the different ways has a different type of income associated with it, or a different quality of income, meaning it's taxed differently. And for the sake of keeping this relatively brief, I'm not going to get into all those different parameters because you don't need to worry about all those different parameters. Here's what I want to show you. I said that 15 minutes worth of talking to get to this point next. And this is the point that I want you guys to tune into and gals to tune into. And this is the point that I want you to go deep with and study and learn and understand. This is the difference between wealthy and middle class. Okay, you ready? Here's what the wealthy do. Here's what the middle class do. The middle class take their income and they use their income on expenses and they use their income to buy liabilities. Okay, now let me back up a minute. Let's first define what an asset is, and let's next define what a liability is. Because most people, especially in the middle class, have confusion about these two things. And I did too. So I'm going to simplify it and clarify it for you. Okay? I don't care what anybody says. Here's how wealthy people think about this. An asset does one thing and only one thing. An asset puts money in your pocket. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability, on the other hand, does the opposite. A liability takes money from your pocket. Okay? So, most people think of their primary residence as an asset. I don't. And here's why. Every month, even if I own that thing free and clear, there's still expenses associated with that property. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, upkeep, yard, utilities. And if there's a mortgage on that, oh my gosh, that thing, massive expense every month. Okay. However, a property that someone else lives in, that you own, or that I own, that we own, that has a monthly positive cash flow, is an asset. That object does not take money out of my pocket. That object puts money into my pocket. Okay? That's it. So when we simplify it, many people think of a car. Most conventional financial planners will list cars and houses as assets. I don't. Why? Because a car, again, takes money out of my pocket. Period. So this is what not wealthy people do. Most of the time, they're taking their income and they're paying for their expenses. And again, this is okay. We all start here. There's nothing to feel bad about, nothing to feel, I'm not giving anybody a hard time here. I'm trying to upgrade your thinking. But most people take income and they pay for expenses, or they take income and pay for liabilities. Well, what's a liability? A liability could be a credit card, right? So we buy big screen TV, we don't pay cash, we put it on a credit card, and now we're paying whatever the heck it is, 29%, 28%, 17% on that dumb thing, right? So we don't want to do what this class of income production people do, okay? Here's what you want to do instead, and it's very simple. You want to take your income, you want to invest into cash flow producing assets, and then the assets cover your expenses, the assets cover your liabilities, and the assets acquire you more assets. Okay? That's the difference. And you might be thinking, oh, Paul, I'm not in a position where I could do that. BS. Okay? It's a mindset thing. So as kingdom builders operating with a kingdom operating system, we have two things. Number one, we need to learn how to make money. And then number two, we need to learn how to convert money into wealth. And so this is how the wealthy think. They take income and they buy assets, and then those assets pay for their expenses, pay for their liabilities. And what, liability could be boat, jet ski, Ferrari, whatever the heck they want to pay for, and also acquire and expand more assets. Because once you have your river covered here, which again is right here. Oops. Color, pen. Then you have surplus, right? And then that's when you can do amazing things. And if you architect your money flow sequence, right? Remember sequence? Johnny bit the dog, the dog bit Johnny. This is an issue of sequence. And here's where it starts to compound and magnify and multiply for you. Because income produced from assets is taxed way lower than income produced from a job. So first level of stewardship right there, you can take your tax rate from 30+% down to basically zero. And again, we want to pay our fair share, but the tax code is built for investors, real estate investors, capital, stock market investors, and business owners, period. That's a fact. Your long-term capital gains are taxed at half your short-term capital gains. Your dividend income is taxed at less than earned income. Everything is stacked against someone who makes their money through a job. Everything. So by flowing your cash this way, you can reduce your taxes, and that is a massive lever. Number two, by flowing your taxes or your cash this way, you can reduce your tax interest volume. Okay, if you look at the interest volume, meaning the percentage of interest on a house payment, it's stacked. The bulk of the beginning of the mortgage note is primarily interest. Why? Because they know that most people move. The average moving is 4 to 5 years. So during those 4 to 5 years, most of the payment goes towards interest. Banks making money. That's why the banks have the big buildings. Same thing with car notes to a degree. Same thing with credit card debts to a major degree. So by getting out of the cycle of the death spiral of using income to pay expenses, bad, then you check off the second thing, which is reduce your interest volume, which is your next biggest expense. Okay. So I know we're covering a lot here, but I want you to make sure you learn this, because you might be thinking, well, Paul, how do I start to invest in assets? Well, these properties that you acquire through the wealth path are assets, right? Certainly you could do dividend, you can invest in dividend producing stocks. Those are like maybe 3 to 4%. You could do some covered call options on top of that and bump it up another percentage point, but I don't mess with any of that stuff. Real estate, in my opinion, is the superior asset for production of cash flow producing assets. And let me show it to you here as a quick example. Now, since I got started 25 years ago, I've analyzed over 150 different business models, and I'm confident that I find the one that rules them all. Now, if you got millions and millions of dollars, there's other options, but for the normal dude, blue collar upbringing like myself, this one is the one, okay? It will not work for those who worship money as their God. So if that's you, just click off this ad, go do something else. This isn't for you. But if you're good, faith-based Christian looking to sow more into the kingdom, start your next business, okay? And listen, even if it's just to escape the 60-hour week rat race so you can spend some time with your spouse and kids once in a while, start your own business, okay? On the next page, I put together the 3 keys that I've learned from decades of experience, along with some step-by-step demonstrations for how this business model works. I want your impact in the kingdom. So check it out. It might be interesting for a Christian who feels a deeper calling on their heart for some time. We'll give you a few more seconds.